welcome to Environmental News. The Colombian Geological Survey reports an earthquake on the island of Haiti, the poorest country in the America, with an epicenter 15 kilometers from Port-au-Prince and 10 kilometers deep, with a magnitude of 7 on the Richter scale, have a duration longer than 1 minute, and due to the superficiality of this, its consequences are more devastating. Due to the magnitude of the earthquake, it spreads rapidly and there are currently repeats in nearby areas. The first then was present just 7 minutes after the earthquake. Places like Cuba were evacuated permanently. There are currently no hospitals. All staff are trapped. There are serious problems such as the lack of public service, as potable water, energy, which makes it difficult for rescue agencies to work. There are also floods in some communities. The roads are totally destroyed and there are no telecommunication service, leaving the capital of Haiti completely incommunicate. As you can see, the consequences are devastating. There are entire communities destroyed, including the presidential palace. This is considered one of the worst earthquakes in history. The material damage has been massive and the fatalities are counted by dozens. Alerts had been raised for possible tsunami not only in Haiti but in countries such as Cuba, the Dominican Republic, and the Bahamas. Some experts classified the earthquake on the Mercalli scale as 12, which means total destruction. Next, we go to environmental engineering expert Sarah Betancourt.
Thanks, Samara. This is how the environmental impact generated are of great importance. The earthquake was due to the displacement of an unknown geological fault. It is known that the island is located in an area of high seismic activity. It is also strategically located for ecosystems such as mangroves, which were highly affected and for future disasters, such as hurricanes, or these floods will no longer be able to dissipate the energy of the water and will affect the population again.
Land erosion is a major problem, with only 3% of Haiti's original forest remaining, severely affecting different species and ecosystem services. The entire water and several system was affected, generating significant health problems. There are millions of tons of rubble from collapsed buildings, which traditionally were not built with cement materials, but also with plastic, wood, metals, which has affected municipal and hospital waste. Haiti has one of the highest deforestation rates on the planet, also from drying of the humid areas and has consequences destabilizing the climate. Thus, an ecological system that protects from storms, major droughts, hurricanes, and the other situations is being attacked. In the other words, human action guided by short-term interests are responsible for the amplification of extreme events. An earthquake cannot be prevented, but a lot can be done to reduce the vulnerability of those living in this high-risk situation.
It will not possible to avoid the environmental effects of disaster if we ignore environmental problems and social inequality. With this, I give way to my partner Ramses.
Good morning. The real disaster in Haiti was not the earthquake. The real problem was not a geologic fault. that moved sideways and that will continue to do so for months and years to come. The real disaster in Haiti is a largely poor population, which today finds itself in the worst conditions of insecurity, conditions that before the earthquake were evident in the most violent exclusion zones. Haiti is the poorest country on the continent. 80% of its population before the earthquake survived on less than $2 a day. Specialists agree that the intense destruction has to do above all with the urban density and the mode of housing construction rather than with the distribution of seismic energy. Specialists agree that the intense destruction has to do above all with the urban density and the mode of housing construction rather than with the distribution of seismic energy. But despite everything, the Haitian population stands up, acts and results. Haiti is also a country that smiles in its pain, that knows about resilience, about the ability to recover and move on.